Through the hot red tides of sin.
This is Faith Blind
Council.
Everything is within.
You create the light. We are one.
That's it.
Cats are good now?
Well, the cats are still rubbing on fucking
They're
everything I own
never
like they
gonna
don't
stop.
already live here.
That's fine. It's okay. They're just being cats.
They're just fucking rats.
This is the Faith Blind Council podcast, and we're here. We're alive,
Yep.
and we're doing stuff this month.
Yeehaw.
Woohoo!
It's gonna be good. It's gonna be okay.
Debatable.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Very
it. All
questionable.
depends on your definition of good.
My definition of good is not bad.
Very astute. I like that.
I know, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you look up burp and belch in the dictionary.
I've never done that.
If you look up burp, it says
God.
it's slang for belch. And if you look up belch, it says it's slang for burp. It's weird.
Recursion.
Yeah, pretty much. So this month, we're going to talk about invocation. We're going to talk about evocation.
Which should wrap up all of our shit on the basics,
Yeah.
really.
Like the basics, yeah. Kind of the technique, I would
Yeah.
say. And then we're going to start getting into colors. And that'll be a whole thing that goes on for a while. And we'll talk about that. But first, before we do that, Dylan,
That's me.
Frauder
I don't have a
Dylan,
name yet.
Ah.
let's check in, bud. How's it been going? It's been a while. And I'm going to be real honest, I'm blanking on what we made you do last time. Oh, Suicide Servitors. We
Yes.
did
There
that.
it is. Yep.
Yeah.
We did that. That was...
That was a group
That
thing,
was a
though.
fucking
Didn't we
gas.
have another one?
Yeah,
We had
I
to
had to
do-
change my paradigm.
You had to
Oh,
stop
yeah.
being racist.
Well, that one came as a challenge. You see,
That was a challenge? Just stop being a dick.
It's
How's
not-
that hard?
That's like telling
Don't
Polish
say
people to not be
dickish things.
shitty people.
Don't
You just
stop.
Oh,
Just
right.
stop being a dick. It's
All
not
right,
hard.
so we're still working on that challenge, everybody.
Clearly.
It's all right. It's okay. So there was also changing your paradigm.
Mhm.
How did that go? First of all, what have you decided to change to? Because if I remember correctly, you were to... It was come up with something that you were going to change
I had to
into.
completely change it, or you guys would pick some random ass one for me to do. So I stuck with my tradition. I'm just like, well, I'm really into Greek and Roman history, so I was like, I'll start with that. Hop over to some more Egyptian shit, and then I realized these fuckers aren't going to do what they said. So I'm going to make you choose one for me.
So
We'll see that threat come through.
Okay. All right. That's... honestly...
I'm got red on it. I was just like, you know what? These assholes are going to... You know what? Let's see what they got.
I actually
Pitch
kind
it.
of respect that.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people, like, you get stuck in doing certain things, right?
And that's why I chose to
And-
go Egypt, and it's the same shit. I know all about it. I want to do something new.
Well, like, Pantheon, like, a lot of different Pantheons will feel very similar.
Right.
Because they're all fucking Pantheons, right?
Mhm.
So, even, like the Greek Pantheon and the Norse Pantheon are different.
Oh, yeah.
But they're both pantheons, so they will start to feel similar, and you have to really dive to start finding big differences at a core level. Wherein, like, a Greek pantheon is very much like, these are gods, they have god things, they do god stuff, and that's really it.
See, depending on the approach you take for it, like, it's hard to find differences in them because as fucking monkeys, we just worship the sun. So that's really all of our cultures. That's all we do is just, it's a different way and a different name to worship the sun.
Absolutely. It's you're coming at the same shit with just a different lens.
Mhm.
And I think it's actually, like, it's kind of like recognizing that and, like, seeing all this different stuff I'm going to choose is just kind of a different way of looking at the same shit is actually, like, it's kind of a step ahead. I dig it.
Mm-hmm. So here you go. Here's
Oh, you've already
your
thought about
paradigm.
it? Oh, shit.
Aboriginal
expecting
dream
this.
time.
What?
Australian Aboriginal dream time. That's going to be your
That's the
your
new
paradigm.
one?
Yep.
Fucking awesome.
And it's
Something I
it's
have
a very
no idea.
it's a very nebulous paradigm because it kind of encompasses hundreds of tribes across the Australian continent. but they all kind of had the same sort of backbone to their beliefs, and so that is what you're going to work with, and you can decide on a particular tribe within it.
I'll look into it.
Yep, you're going with
Cool, new paradigm. Fuck yeah.
Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime.
So there's that.
What's the Dreamtime aspect of it? Why is Dreamtime in it?
It's, from what I can remember, it's the reason it's called Dreamtime is that several tribes believed that our true lives existed when we were dreaming. When you were awake, that was when your real self was dreaming and you had to work through things, and actual reality existed through dreams. And so it was called the Dreamtime because that is where true reality actually existed. Which, that's from what I recall. It's been several years since I looked into it, but correct me if I'm wrong.
I want to say there's also a very, big emphasis on group dreaming in that.
Yeah.
Synchronized dreaming.
Yes.
And there's also, one of the big things with it is not the construction of, but the recognition of your dream self.
Yeah.
It's very much tribally based, and it's a collective. So that's where you would get things like the song lines, where they would have tribal songs, and those songs, as you were walking through the outback, that would give, or based on the cadence of the song, it would help give you directions to where things were in the outback. But there was very much a focus on tribal identity and as a collective. And you had to work together because the Australian outback is a very, very hostile place.
Oh, yes, it is.
And you had to do whatever it took to survive. And you had to cling to those people that you lived with, that were part of your community, in order to survive.
Oh yeah, this is gonna be great. Did you have this already pre-planned for me, or is this off the
this
top
was,
of your head?
Yeah.
Wow, this is fucking great choice, considering I've been working with magic to help my sleep. So hell yeah.
Well, okay, there's
Cool.
something.
Synchronicity. So there's that.
Yeah.
But hey, you know what? I'm gonna say props to you for just being like, nah, fuck it. I'm gonna call their bluff.
Right? Fucking got 3 hours into reading shit about ancient Egypt and shit like that, and the gods just like, you know what? This is boring. Fuck this. Let's see what they got.
Yeah, we're not gonna go with any other Western mysticism.
Yeah.
We're not gonna go Eastern. We're going Oceanic,
which is good. So we've not. There was some. I swear to God, there was something else. But I can't remember what it was.
The other challenge?
Yeah.
There was
To make the suicide.
the Suicide Servitor.
Yeah.
Okay, there was that. So let's talk about that for what we can.
Yeah, so my own personal one, it hasn't destroyed itself yet, but it's in the process. So basically what I had created was a sort of Wendigo Servitor. You know what a Wendigo is?
I do.
You know what a Wendigo is?
Act as if I don't.
Okay, so Wendigo, the idea of the Wendigo comes from Native American mythology, particularly tribes that lived in the far north, and it was something that someone could become, or it was an outside entity that established itself during particularly harsh winters. Essentially, if things were bad enough that you had to eat someone or die, the minute you ate someone, you became a Wendigo. And once you became a Wendigo, you were constantly hungry, and you only craved human flesh. And by eating human flesh, you became hungrier and hungrier, and you could not sate your fucking hunger at all. And so I created that. As you both know, I'm a fat piece of shit.
It's much like that episode of Always Sunny where they get the hunger.
Right, yeah. Exactly. So I created a Wendigo Servitor that I have a goal weight, and I created this Servitor with the idea that it will continue to eat itself and thus eat part of me until it completely devours itself upon achieving my goal weight, and at that point it will be gone. But the thing is as it eats, it becomes more ravenous and starts eating more, and I start losing more weight in the process. So far, since we did this, I've lost 35 pounds.
Yeah. So, like, very effective.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very, very much self-fulfilling. As it starts working, it works more, and it works more, and it works more, and it works more. Until
I hit that goal weight that is a healthy goal weight, and once it hits that, it will have devoured itself, and it will be gone. So far, it's working according to plan, but haven't seen its self-destruction yet.
Yeah, yet.
For sure. Do you feel like it's getting stronger, or it's getting weaker? Or both?
I feel that it's actually getting stronger to the point where, like, I can go 4 times where normally, like, I'd sit at lunch or like lunch break at work, and instead of sitting there like, oh well, I'm just bored eating, I have been able to focus my mind on other things, and it's helped destroy my lust for soda, so that's helpful. Like, I actually drink fucking LaCroix and shit.
LaCroix?
Yeah, so, and it's not bad, except for the lime, or like the lemon lime flavor, that still tastes like Pine Sol. Yeah. But the rest of them, no, that's fine. I actually quite enjoy them.
Even the coconut one?
No, that coconut water tastes like someone is spitting water into your mouth.
Very true. Very apt.
So,
well, that's good. That's something that I think is a good way to approach doing something that can be inherently destructive. Is finding a way to embrace the destructive nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of turn that. You're not trying to conform that destruction into being something else.
It's kind of like a controlled demolition.
Yeah, very much. It's a controlled burn.
Yeah.
To keep a forest fire from happening.
Yeah.
Which is really, really good. Dylan, what do you got?
I made mine a horrid drunk in an attempt to become sober-ish. His goal isn't to make me sober. His goal is to sober himself up so he dies. When we made this, I usually drank like 3 times a week, every week. Made this little motherfucker, and this past month, cut it down to once a week, and last week, didn't even drink.
So he's stealing your booze, basically.
Yeah, and I fucking hate him.
You basically have a booze goblin.
Yep, and he's damn fine at his job. We partied once.
Like
I broke my toe in the process.
So he breaks, he broke out of the goblin factory into a house that only has booze in it, and he's just shoveling the booze.
Like how Yar is cradling his precious baby bottle of vodka.
Yeah,
I had one that size.
There are no carbs in vodka.
Thing. Oh, gotta love that potato juice.
It's like the crash diet from Vogue in the 60s.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing but water and vodka.
So
good for your husband.
Vodka's just Russian for little water.
So you made this obviously consciously or subconsciously to deal with
my rampant alcoholism.
Yeah, with problems with, alcohol addiction, and you feel like it's been helping.
It's been helping pretty well, except for last Saturday where I drank an entire bottle of vodka and broke my toe.
That's a bad idea.
Yeah.
I mean, was it conscious? I didn't look at my toe and say I didn't want it.
It's still a bad idea. The whole bottle of alcohol. Assuming it's not a little airplane bottle.
It was that size, the one he's holding.
That's a terrible idea.
This is 2 liters of vodka.
Oh, I know. It was a horrible night.
That's awful. You should not do that.
So, in that aspect, where does the self-destruction come in for the servitor? Is it going to destroy itself?
After a month, it's going to destroy itself after I stop giving it alcohol for a straight month.
Oh, okay.
That's my goal. 1 month, no alcohol. I'm going to watch that piece of shit writher in front of my door. And then I'm going to get drunk, baby!
So it's interesting.
Short-term goals, yes!
Well, I mean, it proves efficacy, even if it's not over long-term. And it's interesting because with alcohol is one of the things that cold turkey quitting will kill you.
Yeah.
So be careful with that. And also, like, I think it's interesting that, like, you're tapping into something that you subconsciously want.
But that's like the exact same with like the mathematician Erdos. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Like, super crazy mathematician who just ate amphetamines all the fucking time and did math. And then one of his friends was like, I think you have a problem with amphetamines. And he's like, fine, fuck you. I'm going to stop using amphetamines for a month. And so he did. And then afterwards, he came back to his friend and he's like, congratulations. I stopped using amphetamines for a month, but you set mathematics back by 5 years. Like, I kind of feel like that's the same, except with him and booze, and the only achievement he's going to make is there's going to be more paper covered in cum.
Yeah.
So much more.
But it's, I mean...
The end result.
that would
Just binding your own books.
Making a library.
That would imply that you were going to do a lot of work when you're blackout drunk anyways. Which I don't think is the case. And I think
the king of the hill.
It's also important to show, even if you're not going to quit drinking, which
Cutting
is
down though.
Which is
that's the goal.
It's the idea is to prove that you have
You're in charge.
Yeah, you have control
I'm
over the
capable of
drinking.
doing this one thing I want to do.
Yeah.
You have the will to stop it, because that's the thing about being a magician. Like, if your will's not strong enough to conquer whatever you want, you're not a magician. You have to be able to use your will and prove that your will is stronger than any outside influence or any inside influence for that matter. It's like I tell people all the time, if you can't control what's going on inside of you, how can you expect to control your reality?
That's good advice.
It's also incredibly true.
Yeah.
So I find it interesting, like, you guys both focused on, like, how can I make this work for me?
Yeah. How did yours work out?
So I took the aspect of a suicide bomber when I made mine.
And we were just yelling at him for racism.
Come on, man.
I didn't say what kind of suicide bomber.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
You're the racist one for assuming.
No.
But, I mean, I took the aspect of not so much what is the destruction, but what does that destruction cause? So the idea was I fed this servitor and I made it with the goal of breaking something.
Yeah.
Of ending a thing. And it did not work in that aspect. It's weird because I can't really talk about, like, specifics. But what I can say is that, like, after that servitor went off, fucking chaos has just been all over my life. Like, just fucking wild shit.
I kind of feel like we had said, you know, with my analogy with mine, like it being a controlled demolition, yours was significantly less controlled. You just kind of went after the foundation of something, not really giving a shit where the building fell.
100%. 100% that's what happened. Because when I was making mine, I was interested in that aspect of it. I was interested in seeing what unforeseen consequences could pop up from this. Because that's something that a lot of people don't like to think about when it comes to magic. Especially starting out. A lot of people think like, okay, I've made my statement of intent and that's the scope that this is in. Right? So I kind of purposefully didn't really craft a lot of, like, safety net.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of, like, well, don't affect this part of my life and don't do this part of it and stay away from this. I was just like, all right, here's a bunch of fucking, like, comp B, let's go, buddy. And, yeah, that was very evident. It's not that it was ineffective, but it was definitely, like, more than I thought I was signing on for at the time.
I would say not ineffective, but ill-defined.
Absolutely. That's a great way of putting it.
I mean, you learn something from it, and
Yeah.
so...
And, like, honestly, it's, it was probably a mistake, and I wouldn't have done it any other way. Like, because where your definition, because I mean, like my non-smoking thing, ruined.
Yeah.
Fucking ruined. Because just the sheer amount of stress that this brought into, like, my day-to-day. And, like, I'll get back on that horse after a time, but it's just, like, that was, like, my crush. That was my go-to. There were other things that were just, like, completely thrown up into the air and, like, all right, well, we're about to see where this stuff falls. And things are falling back down, and it's kind of a new landscape. And navigating that and learning new boundaries and new, new shit about myself as a magician. So,
right.
Like, learning shit is a painful process, especially when you're learning shit about yourself.
No, absolutely. It totally is. And that's one thing that you'll come across when doing this is you'll find your own boundaries, you'll find your own limits, and it's your job to test them. And you have clearly tested your limits and pushed them and seen what pushing them can do, and you're still here.
And I think I want to point out, because it sounds a lot like bullshit right now, I want to point out, and this isn't necessarily going to help, but Yara, you can speak to the efficacy of the intended target.
Yeah.
Like, it worked.
Right.
It just threw shit everywhere, though.
Right. So,
kind of like a bomb.
Right, like there was a crater, but you didn't. You foresaw the crater. You didn't anticipate the shrapnel.
I didn't care about the shrapnel.
Right.
I think in some way, shape, or form, I knew there was going to be, like, secondary damage and secondary blast. I did not care at the time that I made it, and it's a very important learning tool of, like, you really need to care about this stuff and think about it. Because it's not going to, it doesn't mean the magic didn't work.
It just didn't work how you had anticipated.
And it also, it had a cost, But yeah, that's, I mean, more or less what happened. So yeah, it's a thing of, like, shit's gonna go wrong. It always will. Because there will be stuff you can't foresee.
It doesn't always go wrong. Because otherwise we wouldn't be doing this in the first place. Yes, welcome to the Faith Blind Podcast, where we're going to teach you methods to ruin your life.
I don't mean, like, shit as far as your magic. Things in your life will go wrong. It's not the end of the world.
No, it's your job to navigate around that.
Exactly.
And that's what proves your strength of will, is how you're able to survive past that.
And I think what's interesting when I had that concept, because at first it was like the edgelord humor of, like, suicide bomber, like,
yeah,
the intention is still, like, shit's still going, like, nothing, like, was effectively killed off, but it's about, like, the aftermath and rebuilding after that.
Yeah, and it makes sense with that. With that servitor having kind of like that mindset of a single ideology, and then after performing this action, not realizing what would happen in the aftermath.
Definitely.
That's a damn near spot on thing about the whole my egregore too. Just my intention was simple. I don't want to drink. Except this one time I wasn't able to do it and got way too bad at it, broke my toe. I wasn't expecting that at all. I thought I was just going to simply, stop drinking so much. And it'd be nice and easy, except that there were a couple times where it wasn't fucking easy, and I 100% did cave in and hurt myself. In more ways than just physical.
How have you been feeding yours? Is it an intention, like, well-defined feeding?
Sometimes, like, I have him in my room, and he's not allowed to leave it. So whenever I'm just sitting in my room, doing nothing, like, get off of work and just, like, all right, fuck it, I'm going to play Borderlands 3 for 4 hours and go to bed. And before I do that, I'll make dinner, watch, like, an episode of Letterkenny or what have you. And while I'm sitting there doing that, it's just like, a beer would be nice. Just kind of looking around, it's like, I realize he's the one who's all like, yeah, dude, go get some fucking beer. Gas station isn't closed yet. Sometimes it's like, dude, fuck off. I want to sit around and do this. And sometimes it's like, all right, where's my fucking sandals? Let's go, buddy.
But are you feeding it intentionally? Because if you're not,
yes,
that's where things come in. If you're not doing it intentionally and you're not doing it regularly,
yeah, like I'm feeding him. Like I said, like 3 times a week. Now I'm just down to 1, but he does get fed 1 time a week. So he was supposed to. If that's what you mean.
I mean, like, your servitor specifically, not you drinking and then that being for your servitor. Yeah, okay. So part of that could be just not, your servitor not getting the attention or the sustenance that it needs. Even if it's just like thinking about it, talking to it.
Because you're the one who set the parameters on it.
Oh, yeah. And I'm the one who's also caving in on it.
Right. But you have to be able to prove that your will is stronger than something that you created.
Yeah. So far, okay. A couple times slipped up and did not do well.
And it happens, You
It's a good experience that next time it's not going to happen.
You learn to like find out how to really communicate and really feed with a servitor. It's just like anything else. If you treat your pet like a thing, your pet's not going to really have any affection or warmth. It's not going to care about you.
I don't know. My fucking football cat's fucking huffing your goddamn shoe without me showing it any affection.
Well, yeah, but it's my shoe, and I show football cat affection.
Ugh, fucking cheese cat
affection.
But I mean, it's if you have a dog and you never show your dog any love or any affection, that dog's
about you.
Yeah,
you feed it and give it water. That's it.
You're not going to be able to train that dog to do, to be able to signal when your dog needs to use the restroom, when your dog needs to do whatever. Right? Your dog's just going to shit in the house.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't fucking know any better. So yeah, I'm still working on that fine line of not overfeeding or underfeeding, just working together. I
don't know. I just like mentally kind of went on a tangent there, like the difference between the mentality of a cat versus a dog is kind of like the difference between a servitor versus an egregore.
That's actually really apt.
Yeah. So with a servitor, like if you don't pay attention to it, if you don't give it its thing, like it's just going to come across an obstacle and fuck shit up, like shit on your floor. But with a cat, if you don't pay attention to it, like, it can still work around things. It can still find things out.
Huh. Yeah. Insightful.
Synchronicity.
Yeah. All right.
Or at least epiphany, even if it's a tiny one.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Still counts. But I think what I would say to you is look for a different way to feed your servitor. Your servitor is about booze. Doesn't mean you have to feed your servitor booze, right?
You could feed it things related to booze. So like
Jello shots?
No, like so beer is created from yeast. What else is created from yeast? Give it bread. Give it like sweet rolls.
Yeah.
Give it something because like
a salted lime.
Yeah, a salted lime, but like with sweet rolls, something like that. With pastries, you're kind of like placating it.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, well, here's a gift. Be nice, please, because it's a sweet, kind of nice, tasty thing.
Yeah, that's something that you can, you start thinking outside the box on things, and you'll find ways to feed a servitor that aren't inherently destructive. And I think we should kind of, like, to wrap this part of it up, like, your servitors do not need to be inherently destructive.
No.
This was
this was an experiment.
A very specific experiment with a set of parameters that is, like, a very small circle of, like,
possible outcomes for a servitor.
Exactly, of what a servitor can be.
Yeah, this was more based on your question last episode, Dylan, of whether or not you can create a servitor that destroys itself, because we had been talking about, like, oh, once a servitor is done, what do you do with it? Well, you can destroy it. You can, stop giving it energy. Well, what happens if you destroy it? Or create it so that it destroys itself? So it was kind of based on that, which is why we challenged each other to create one that was inherently destructive.
And it was also like to like, okay, put your fucking money where your mouth is, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think the lesson also is like, magic is whatever you make it. A lot of times people will ask, "Can I do something? Should I do something?"
No, you absolutely should. So, for example, like Dreadnought over here, he came at it kind of flippantly and approached it from edgelord kind of thing, but he learned something tremendously. Did you not? From that?
Absolutely. The only difference I would say is it wasn't so much that it was like flippant for the sake of being flippant. It was the idea of seeing what happens when the destruction. Mine was set up to, because your guys are still alive doing their thing.
Right.
Mine was more focused on what's the fallout? What happens? So I purposefully created it without a lot of parameters, and mine is gone. Mine went and carried out its task in the first week that it was there.
Yeah.
So it's flippant is a good word, but it has a connotation of, well, he didn't give a shit, and it's not that I didn't give a shit.
I would say glib.
That works.
Yeah.
I was focused on a different aspect of it.
It's a bit more. Yeah. It's you approached it with a sort of glibness, so it wasn't entirely sincere.
Oh, it was.
Well, no, you know what I'm saying though. Like it was like there was intention and all of that, but it wasn't this super like, okay, this is what's going to happen. Like, this is what I'm creating it for, as opposed to, all right, well, I'm just gonna light a match and see what catches fire.
Yeah, and I think that like there can be a connotation there that people who do things like that aren't taking it seriously. And it's not that it wasn't serious. It was just, like, I knew what I was getting into, not to the extent that it happened.
Right.
But I knew what it was getting into because I was interested to see the aftermath. More so than I was the process.
Right. And that could be one way of approaching your magic. Like, as someone who's not one of us, but wanting to see the outcome, desiring an outcome, and basically seeing the end before the process.
Yeah. Of seeing, like, focused on the results.
Yeah.
I guess would be a way of looking at it.
Like with mine, yes, there is an ultimate end goal, but there's a journey to it. And so far, it's been doing its shit, but, like, until I reach that goal, I won't know its outcome. There's not a definitive deadline, as opposed to just fucking striking a match and seeing what happens.
Yeah. So yeah, different ways of doing things.
It's the best way about practicing magic, honestly. We all have our own ways of doing it.
And it's also, like, you can definitely see the, like, where people's, I'm looking for a word here.
Balls?
Priorities.
Ah.
So
where people's just like their fucking wrinkled, saggy testes.
Yeah, priorities.
Priorities. Yeah. On point. Got it. A+ Dylan.
Nailed it. Fucking nailed it.
98th percentile.
This is why I'm here.
Winner.
Fucking Mensa.
Balls.
Yeah, nailed it. So let's do a real quick break, and then we can come back. We can talk about invocation, evocation. Yeah. So yeah, we'll take a break, and then we'll be back.
Today's episode is sponsored in part by Welcome to Paradise. Founded on the principle that ritual and occult items are best when vetted and created by actual practitioners, Welcome to Paradise provides a place for magical artists to showcase their tools and art to those in search of them. Aiming toward total inclusiveness, they carry items from paradigms like Wicca, Left Hand Path, and Voodoo, and are always looking for more artists to diversify their ranks. So, whether you're a magician looking for a new piece to help your practice, or a venue to finally display your occult artwork to the world, Welcome to Terradice wants you to join their growing community. All you have to do is go to welcometoterradice.com.
We're back.
Yeah, we made it back from the thing, and here we are. So we're going to transition now into talking about invocation and evocation. And there was actually a really good message that we had gotten on the Facebook group about this that was very serendipitous, almost.
Yeah. So we had gotten a message, and it was a rather lengthy one, and for that we appreciate it, because this person actually said that until they started listening to our podcast, they hadn't really practiced chaos magic at all, which is what we're trying to fucking facilitate, is a method of practicing. And she had said that she had some questions in regards to working with a servitor and doing magic for a particular goal. So basically, let me read the last bit. It says, she's trying to get into a particular college. And in order to get into this particular college, she needs a particular a score on her test. And she had said, I'm a fairly good student. I rank about 87%. But she said she's not that good to become top 1 among her state. You need like 97 or 98 to get that in order to get like all of the scholarships and all of that shit. So, she had asked the question. I was thinking, is it possible to use magic to get that first rank? I mean, is it even okay, or am I being too greedy? So that's my first question. Should I use magic to achieve a goal like this?
Yes.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
100%.
And I don't mean to say that in a way that dismisses it, but you get this a lot especially when you first start out. Can I do this? Should I do this? Yes. Yes, you should. Because if it doesn't work, then it didn't work. Okay. But you'll find the more that you push that limit of can I do this, you'll find out what you can do with magic, which is anything.
Right.
You can do fucking anything with it, provided there's a means of manifestation.
Right. And in my message back to her, I had said, remember, the performance of magic results in bending probability in your favor. You claim to be within a score of about 87% plus. The probability of reaching higher than that, like maybe by 10%, is not that fucking bad.
Not at all.
That's really good odds.
Yeah, it would be one thing where, like, if you're in, like, the 65th percentile or whatever the fuck, I don't know how percentiles work, but, like, that's
but if I'm like 10% off, yeah, I'm gonna fucking throw chips on that game.
Yeah. Even if you are in like the 65% range, still do magic for it.
Right. I mean,
like,
what's the worst that happens?
You
Nothing.
get an 84%.
That's still a degree of success. That's
Fuck
a
yeah,
huge
it is.
degree of
Huge
success,
one, too.
right?
Yeah.
Like understanding, and it comes with understanding what magic really is. And a lot of that has to do, again, with bending probability. You can't break reality, but you can bend it.
Right, and you can bend it in your favor. That's the part. That is the fucking cornerstone. Like, you're at 87% of... Like, 87%, you're shooting for 95%. That's within 10%. Yes, fucking do it. There's a good possibility that you can reach your goal.
Or surpass it.
And that's not...
or surpass it. Even be better.
That's such a good place to start because it's so measurable. Like, it's tangible.
Yeah.
There is a quantifiable way for you to see, I was successful by this degree. I missed it by this much.
Yep.
And a lot of times people will see magic as this pass-fail kind of thing. I didn't get the score I wanted, so the magic failed. But how much did your score go up?
It came within an increment.
Yeah. So you can look at, like, I didn't get the goal I wanted, but through doing this, I literally became this much better of a student.
Right. So she had also said a follow-up question, if I should then, by what means? I can only create sigils and kind of know how to create servitors and egregores based on what you said, but I haven't made one yet. Should I use a god form? To be honest, I have no clue how to use a god form. I only have a vague idea of what it is. For a goal this big, the method should be something commendable too, I suppose.
That is like exactly what we're going to get in today, is working with god forms. That's what invocation and evocation are geared towards. By what method? I think the by what method thing is kind of a tricky spot, because any method will work, but you need to know, like, if you're doing something big, one sigil's not going to cut it.
Right, and it all depends on your technique as well.
Yeah. I mean, you can create a series of sigils. You could create a hyper sigil. You could do all of that stuff. Generally speaking, Servitor Egregore would be something that is better suited for this, given her level of experience.
Right. And not only that, she had set a deadline for about April 2020. So she has plenty of time to work with, especially with...
For 2020.
Get lit.
Shoot for the stars, guys. Shoot for the goddamn stars.
Okay, so she had set a goal.
She has plenty of time to do so. Plenty of time. And if she were to create a servitor based and like formulated around this goal, there's plenty of time to feed it and do all of this shit. And as I had explained to her, you could perceive this in different ways, that working with the servitor and like having a sigil for it and having that sigil visible while you're studying and shit.
Put it on a bookmark.
Yeah, put it on a bookmark. Carve it onto a candle that you light only when you're doing your studying.
I've actually done that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. It helps a lot.
Yeah, doing that, and you have a servitor that you are feeding while you're doing this, and for all we know, it's just strengthening your own mind and making you retain that information even better.
It's going to help, it's helping with memory recall. It's helping with things like that, whereas, like, a lot of people, especially outside of, understanding what magic is, think like, oh, I'm going to sleep with this textbook under my pillow and I'm going to do all this stuff and then I magically pass the test. Like, no, you are creating a way to basically clear the lane.
Right.
That's what you're doing. You're clearing the lane so that you can travel down the easiest path for you to get to where you want to go. But you still have to walk the path.
Yep.
You still, like, above all of this, whatever else she does, she still has to study. She still has to do all of this stuff. But what you do by incorporating magic, sigils, servitors, spells, what have you, you are clearing that lane. You're clearing a magical lane for you to walk down, or you're clearing your headspace of like, nope, now it's time to study. I'm doing all of this stuff as a ritual because this is my study ritual. Now I know I'm putting myself psychologically into that headspace of it's time to study and I don't give a shit about anything else now.
And it's actually interesting. She had pointed out there was a synchronicity in our discussion, because one of the ways that I had told her of charging this servitor was just explaining to it. If you were to have a candle with that sigil carved into it, just explaining to it the concepts that you are learning and just talking to it like you're trying to teach it. And she had said to me, I'm not sure. I keep on talking to air for hours to the point that if someone saw me in the act, they would think that I'm crazy or something. I've been doing this since I was a child. So when you said that I should have a discussion with it, that just clicked. So I'll probably create a servitor after I get a bit more experienced with this servitor that I'm going to create, but I'd still love to know more about god forms from you guys in the next episode, and maybe we'll consult one or more before the exam.
Fuck, that was beautiful. Talking to air as a kid. I used to talk to trees when I was younger, too, constantly. And, of course, people ran into me, thought I was fucking crazy. I was like, fuck off, dude. Have you talked to this tree yet?
People who run into you today still think you're crazy.
Oh, of course, constantly.
It's fine.
I
It's
mean, I
okay.
still talk to trees, so, amongst other things.
Slightly less drunk and talking to the neighborhood elm.
But not slurring. That's the important part.
Yeah, the trees don't like slurring. It's very hard to understand.
But I think that to get back onto the questions that we're kind of dealing with right now, that is a thing where, again, people kind of view it as like, this definitely ends here and begins here. Working with a god form means that working with an egregore or a servitor ends. And it doesn't. Like, I mean, you could consult a god form about how to best work with a servitor, how best to create a servitor. You could consult a god form about how to feed your servitor. Like, these are all things you can do. And as we'll get into later into the episode, there is a strong argument to be made that consulting a god form is actually just consulting with your holy guardian angel, future magical self.
Right. And then finally wrapping this up, she said, it'd be very helpful if you guys talk about whether or not I can use more than one thought form, egregore, god form, servitor, for a singular purpose to have a sure thought. And she wanted to throw out Hail Skafuckle.
Fuck yeah.
Hail Skafuckle.
Dude, Skafuckle's the shit. We should make
I love
Skafuckle
that
shirts.
guy. We should.
Like, not like, I should make a shirt for him to wear.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, we'll get to it. It'll be fine. Anyways, so to answer that question, I'll give my take on it. Should you work with multiple things? Can you work with multiple things? Can you? Absolutely. What I find is that if you feel like there's all these different paths I can take, rather than half-stepping on two paths, put all of that energy and effort into one.
Don't half-ass it. Full-ass it.
Yeah, don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. That being said, you can work all of those different aspects into the one thing you're doing. Again, consulting a god form to help you make a servitor. Asking for a familiar to act as a servitor or an egregore. You can...
Or asking a god form for guidance in what you should do.
Absolutely. That's one of my, like... So, going back to, like, divination, one of the stones I have in my stone pouch is...
It's your ball sack!
Yeah, my stone bag. One of my stones is consult a higher entity.
What's your other one?
Oh, beat me to it.
Hold on, we gotta find it. That one's for low vibrations mostly.
Oh, so were
Hey.
you just sitting in the back seat of dude's car?
Yeah, totes.
Fuck.
But, you know, finding a way to work all of that in, a lot of times people aren't sure what they should do, so they kind of shotgun scatter in all sorts of different directions. Taking time to figure out what it is you really want will inform the path for you to go down. And it sounds like she's really doing that of like, I've thought about doing this, I've thought about doing that, I have this definite timeline, and I want to make sure that I'm, you know, on the right, the easiest path, right?
The path of least resistance.
Exactly. You can do all of those things, but the more you meditate on what your goals truly are, you will be inspired to take that, like, it'll inform the way you're going.
Right. Like, figure out, okay, you want to score 95+% in this test. Why? Okay, you're going to a particular school. Why do you want that particular school? To obtain a specific degree. All right, why do you want that degree? So that way you can start working within a particular field. All right, well, why not bypass all of that shit in order to figure out a way to get into that particular field?
Yeah, you could do all sorts of stuff. So it's important to, at a very base level, understand what it is you want. Going back to my servitor that I made for the experiment.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily understand what I really wanted, so that magic was very messy. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's kind of the play there, right?
Learning process.
Yeah, the more you understand, the more you'll be able to inform that decision, and it won't just feel like happenstance.
Right.
So with that all said, let's get into like working with God forms, invocation, evocation, the differences between the two. And I feel like, contrary to kind of popular thought, I guess, invocation is way easier. It's so much easier.
I'm gonna kind of disagree, because evocation is just okay.
Let's start with
We need to start with definitions first.
Yeah.
Evocation versus invocation, in my opinion, and what I have practiced and studied, evocation is bringing an entity, deity, thought form, what have you, into the space around you.
Okay. Versus invocation,
which is bringing the thought form, entity, god form, etc. into you. So it's basically a, hey dude, let's hang out and chat by my doorway, versus be inside me now, daddy.
Woof. But hey, I'm not here to judge.
If you're offering.
So the definitions that I have written down for this, and I can't remember where I got them from at this point, but it's okay, is very similar to that, where invocation is the process of inviting an entity, spirit, or aspect into one's corporeal being.
Yep.
Possession.
Oh,
Indwelling.
that's a really easy way to put it.
Evocation is the process of inviting an entity, spirit, or aspect into the vicinity or atmosphere around oneself. So invocation, inside.
Yep. Evocation is in the area.
Is outside.
In the area.
That works. So that's the primary difference. I think for me, the reason invocation is so much easier is because with invocation, it's a lot easier for me personally to tell when I'm not alone.
Right. That's one thing that it's discussed in the book Advanced Magic for Beginners by Alan Chapman, that if you're not particularly inclined to visualization, you can always do things to acclimate the entity to appear before you. So you could completely fill your room with incense smoke. That'll give it plenty of room to show up. Or you could stare into a mirror, like a black mirror with 2 candles. There's that. There's also feeling. Feeling is a big part of this. If you call an entity into the space, a drop in temperature, feeling a presence,
Changing in the lights.
right?
Things like that will happen.
Or it just like, if you're doing it by yourself, which a lot of chaos magicians do, unless they've met with people, whatever. But doing it by yourself, hearing a noise. Like, you do this, and you say, like, okay, well, I've done all of this, come to me. And then, off in the distance, you hear, like...
Yeah.
Okay, that was something.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's very, very subtle. And in bringing it in, once you've recognized, okay, there's something here, that's when you can start, opening yourself up to that.
Absolutely. I think part of the reason is kind of how I think about invocation versus evocation, which Blue Fluke actually has a really interesting take on invocation. as opposed to, oh, I'm inviting this entity into my being. Blue Fluke looks at it as I'm grafting this aspect onto my local personality.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
Which, temporarily. And the idea is, like, what I take from that is that invocation is, it makes it much more of an act of will.
Yeah.
More so than, like, okay, I'm here, like...
Which I can personally see that in other paradigms or traditions, like with Judaism and the Sefer Yetzirah, the concept of Yahweh just pulling back from the Ein Sof.
Mm-hmm.
And by pulling back, it creates a void, and that void is able to allow space to be filled.
Exactly. I think that it also, like, with Blue Fluke's take, it's more of an active process. Which helps me to kind of do it in a way that's more involved. Of, like, a lot of times people think of invocation as, like, okay, waiting around until the entity that we're summoning shows up. In that...
Sometimes it's already there.
Yeah, sometimes it's already there. With the idea of grafting it on or injecting code, it's you are taking these steps that have there's a 1, 2, 3, 3A, 3B of how to do it, and by doing those things, you are now setting the stage and doing it much more like a ritual, I guess.
Quick question, though.
Yeah.
Who's Blue Fluke?
Blue Fluke is the guy that wrote the Psychonauts Field Manual.
Okay.
Which, it's on DeviantArt.
Yeah.
It's a very, very good comic as to, like, the basics of chaos magic.
Yeah. So he just makes a comic form of this book.
Yep.
Oh,
It takes a very information model view of how things work. A very, like...
Yeah.
Very, like, technomancy
Yeah.
Way of doing things. And for me, that's something that, like, I've always been interested in, you know, electronics, computers.
Yeah. So I know that's usually the one you usually go for.
So that's something that I kind of identify with a little more, and it's easier for me to kind of translate.
Yeah, it hits home a little truer.
Yeah. Which isn't to say that, like, I can't read, like, if I read, like, Carroll or Crowley or whomever, my mind translates it into a more information model way of retaining that information. But
right, and it works the same for me. Like, I tend to, if someone gives me an explanation for something, or how something works, I just kind of put it into a framework where it makes sense in my own head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, well, you're talking to 3,000-year-old deities. Well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you're fitting them into an archetype of how you perceive them.
Yeah, and that, again, goes back to the base belief of God forms that I'm talking to are really just aspects of my future magical self. You're putting them into an archetype or a program that makes sense in your brain.
And this is where evocation and invocation are extremely important. What is actually happening? During this process, what is actually happening? So, during invocation, as far as I am concerned, within a psychological model, say you are invoking a particular deity or god. What are you doing? You are bringing into yourself and acting out every aspect of that deity that you can, or that you're knowledgeable of. So, say it's Thoth, right? The Egyptian deity Thoth. A scribe, librarian, basically, god of wisdom. So you kind of a fucking prehistory nerd,
Yeah.
sort of. So you just kind of bring the nerd into yourself and become that. Or, say, for example, Thor from Norse Pantheon. You have strength. You have solving problems not so much with cleverness, but with just brute mentality.
Being headstrong.
Yeah.
Right. Doing things that way, and you become that. While you're invoking that, you bring those aspects into your mind, and you become that. You start acting in that way. You start changing the flow of your own thought so that it will melt into that particular way of seeing things. And in doing so, you become invoked by that god. So really, all a god form is kind of a prototype for how you would perceive things, which is sort of within the psychological model of why pantheons exist. They're all different facets to one diamond. So what you're doing in invoking a particular deity is focusing on a single aspect of your own psyche. And in doing so, you strengthen that part of yourself. And you are asking that part of yourself. So if you are asking Thor, if that's the deity you want to talk to, or make a pact with, or whatever, it is that brute strength, headstrong, fuck all of this, like, logic and cleverness. I'm going to figure it out, so help me fuck.
Yeah. I don't need books for this. I have a hammer.
I will figure this out.
This problem is a nail.
I don't need thinking. I will figure it out. That's the part of your brain you're getting in contact with.
Yeah, just letting yourself become that.
Right.
Really letting yourself drown into that.
Right. And this could be within your own pantheon. Creating your own pantheon. There are aspects of, or different deities that you could call upon that could represent different things to you. But they're all aspects, they're all facets of you. And you are calling upon a certain facet to solve your problem. Because you know what the problem is, and you know what can solve the problem.
You are, to put it kind of the way that I look at it, with more of like the information aspect, you think of, different pantheons, different god forms or whatever that serve the same process, basically. You can do a lot of the same shit on a Windows machine that you can on a fucking Mac. But they have different programming and different ways to do it. And it's which one am I more comfortable with?
Yeah, which one do I want to work with?
Which one do
I want to solve my personal problem?
Yeah, which one do I identify with more? Like, if you look at, like, Mars and fucking Ares, which, granted, Roman and Greek,
They're pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of a good way of looking at the whole thing, though. They're the same thing. Those two, they do the same shit, but which one do you prefer? Which name do you prefer? They do the same thing.
Right, and this stretches back to what we had talked about at the beginning. They all kind of have the same thing because we all worship the sun.
So it's very much like, okay, well, which language identifies with me more?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, when it came to paradigms, myself in particular, for a long time, depending upon the season, I would lean towards a certain paradigm. So, like, winter, I would follow Norse, because it's cold, and fucking ice giants and shit.
Hardens a man.
Yeah. But then, once things started melting, and the greens started coming out, I started focusing on traditional Wicca or Druidism, and I would lean towards that. Sure, that makes sense. Come summertime, it was kind of a free-for-all, but then once fall came around, there was kind of a leaning towards death deities.
Makes sense. The death of the seasons.
Right.
And rebirth, so it starts it all over.
Right. And so that's what I would bring in, and those were aspects of myself that I recognized were there as the seasons passed that I would call out to.
Absolutely. Sorry, I was looking at our notes of getting more specifically into... So do we want to start with invocation, evocation? I mean, we've kind of covered them at, like, in a broad sense.
Yeah.
And, like, mechanically, we've covered invocation.
Do you guys want to dive deeper into those two, or...
There's a couple of things that I like here. Chapman, who did Advanced Magic for Beginners, basically describes two methods of invocation, which were what we were talking about. The first method is you would basically do the same ritual that you would for an evocation, but once the evocation starts to hit, you are inviting it into your body.
I think in order to explain that, you would kind of need a prerequisite of how to perform an evocation ritual.
Absolutely. Real quick before that, the second method that he talks about is kind of, I think, how you and I both do invocation a little more, which is described as fake it till you make it. You think about all the things that you would associate. If you're trying to invoke a war god, you think about all of the stuff that you associate with that. Decisive action, tactical thinking, problem solving,
Fucking espionage.
strength, show of force. You think about all of that stuff, and you just bring that up and act that out until you are invoked by that. So with that, let's talk about doing an evocation ritual, and then understand that an evocation ritual and an invocation ritual mechanically are very much similar. They're almost the same thing.
Yeah, pretty much. It's all based on intent, really.
Yeah. And that's a lot of what magic is to begin with.
Yep.
So an evocation ritual, again, you start with your intent. You start with, it is my will to evoke the aspect of X god that this god form may help me with Y problem. Right? That's your statement of intent. And then you put together what are things that through, research or just, historically this god likes.
Look through correspondence tables. Look through all sorts of books. Even just follow your own intuition. So, as you had brought up, say Mars or Ares, gods of war. So you're trying to evoke these things. Bring their essence into the space that you are working in. What things could you possibly do? They are both representative of red. Red as the red of blood. You could have things like red wine. You could be wearing red clothes at the time. You could have fucking war drums playing in the background that you would found on YouTube.
Just make up a war face.
Yeah.
Just get into it.
Put on war paint. Put on whatever it is. And it's one of those things where people think of me like, I have to, do things historically. Like these are, I need like a sword and a shield and all this stuff. There are like all sorts of shit you could do. You could put on like a fucking drill sergeant hat. Like, those are dudes that are instructing for the art of war.
Yeah.
Like, have that there. You can
fucking
bring it.
Drill Sergeant Emery. Just play fucking the first third of Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah, just
on repeat.
Yeah, just that whole like, let me see your war face. Like that whole thing, right? You could, whatever. Get little fucking like army man, like the green army man figurines, right?
Yep.
The 99 cents at the dollar store, and set those up and like they're having a fight.
Dude,
and shit.
I live like right next to a fucking dollar store and I haven't seen them.
Do you go to that?
Yeah,
part
I do. I go to the dollar store and I haven't seen green army men.
That's
it's a fucking travesty.
That is an institutional failure.
Yeah.
Anyway.
This is the death of Middle America.
But you could do that.
Word.
You could do that. You could do, play fucking, like, Stratego.
Yeah.
Something like that, Like, you can do these things. Like,
Put yourself in the mindset. And by putting yourself in the mindset, it's like I had briefly said earlier that just because you're not focusing on them being there, there's no physical manifestation, doesn't mean you're not working with it.
yeah, there's actually a really good Chapman quote about that, where he basically says, like, if you do the ritual and there's no, like, booming voices or crazy visualizations, the magic still works.
Right.
Because it's as much about bringing it into yourself and putting yourself in that mindset as it is about, like, actually invoking this deity or evoking this deity. That being said, there are certain people that just works better for. And it's just how your mind frames it. So you've got, like, these physical representations, or tangible representations, I guess I should say, of, like, colors, little statues, figures, sound going on. It's all in order to achieve a specific gnosis, right? Again, using the example of a war god, you're generally going to have, like, this excitatory gnosis of
Fucking beating drums, beating your own chest, like pounding a spear against a shield.
Right? Is anything to hype you up for the oncoming fight?
and I mean just sitting there and physically holding a weapon, like a sword, a rifle,
Knives.
whatever,
Knives, whatever, pointy things,
a club, whatever your magical
rounded
weapons.
things.
You got the beady things, the stabby things, and then the stab from a distance things. Any one of those.
Thinky things. Be at a distance. Send the poor people to do it.
Like that's a different aspect of war, right? The strategic aspect of
Donald Rumsfeld.
yeah. Invoke Darth Rumsfeld. It'll be fine. Just throw money at the situation.
Yep.
Whatever.
The poor people won't solve my problem.
Right, money. What did I say? Anyhow, you have that stuff that's helping you get into that mindset. And then from there, the difference between evocation and invocation is what you're asking for.
So instead of, like, all right, we're doing this banging the spear on the shield and we're praising you. All right, we're doing that. Hey, we've got a vessel dog. You want to come over here? And we can talk.
Yeah.
Get inside me. Come in me, daddy.
Oh, God. No. Anyway.
I have nothing to say.
Anyways, so basically you go
Just
into...
gonna let that lay there?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I sure am. I absolutely am. But you've gotten to that...
A little bit longer?
Yep.
Okay.
So you've got that gnosis, and you're now. What are you doing with it? Do you have this entity in this space? Do you invite it in? Do you let it just indwell the space around you? Either way, typically there's a reason you've done this. You're asking for help with the problem. So now just ask for help with the problem.
Do why you brought it here.
And this is one thing, like, yeah, okay, you're making a pact. This is kind of a medieval thing. But at the same time, like, if you, from my perspective, see it through the psychological thing, you are offering some part of yourself to another part of yourself. It's like, okay, well, we're going to get through this. But if I don't get through this, I'll probably fuck something else up. So if I don't, use Mars as a method of domination over a shitty micromanaging boss, if I don't do that, then there's going to be another part of myself that I decide to sacrifice because I'm too timid to actually do so.
Yeah, and it may involve, like, I'll probably have a downswing of depression or something, whatever it is related to the pact that you've made or the offering.
Or
that you've
sticking your dick in a rotisserie chicken.
made. You say that like it's a bad thing.
Yeah, well.
I
it's
feel
a
like
thing.
that's job well done.
It's only a bad thing when you do it at Kroger.
Or if it's still hot, like
Right,
fresh
debatable.
out of the oven.
You gotta
Or if it's
wait.
too cold, I guess. You put-
There is a precise amount of time when it is okay to stick your dick in a rotisserie chicken.
isolate
We're
that.
here to
Isolate
tell
that audio.
And we are here at Faith Blind Council to tell you when that precise amount of time is.
136 degrees.
That is.
You guys
That's
are weak.
really precise, Dylan.
That is.
You guys are asking questions. I have answers.
All right. Well, thanks for. I did not evoke that.
And yet here we are. I feel like we've evoked the Dice Man into this conversation.
I don't like it.
It's okay.
Okay.
So, real quick to recap, a ritual mechanically for evocation. Start by picking
Start by picking aspects and different
identify
things that are representative of whatever you're going to evoke. So if you're calling upon a death god, have things like bones or like skull imagery or fucking some like black. Wear black and tombstones and like we're coming up on October, just spooky shit like fucking jack-o'-lanterns, whatever. I don't give a shit what you do.
So, you've identified the problem of what you want to do.
angry about that. I don't know why.
It's fine. So, to recap,
Yep.
you identified the problem area in your life that you want.
There's not enough spooky shit.
Yeah.
I need more spooky shit.
All right, so there's not enough spooky shit. I need more spooky shit. Number 2, decide on a god form that would be appropriate for that.
God of spooky shit.
Yeah. Just a god of spooky shit, death entity.
Vincent Price.
Yeah.
God of spooky
Okay,
shit.
so Vincent Price. Got it. Number 3, you come up with a statement of intent, which is, it is our will to evoke the aspect of Vincent Price that we can bring more spooky shit into the world.
And I hereby offer Tim Burton's blood.
Okay, so now you've got to think of things that make you think of Vincent Price.
Tim Burton's blood.
That works too.
Yep.
Other things that you would have.
Johnny Depp's blood.
This is getting real specific.
Where are you getting all this blood?
Helena Bonham Carter's blood.
Anyhow,
They're all in the same goddamn movies.
all of them. Every of them. So you have these things. Those are going to be your offerings, but you have things that would remind you of Vincent Price specifically.
I'm going to burn a VHS copy of Sleepy Hollow.
Okay. That's fair. You've done all of this, and now you have... within the confines of this ritual, you've now evoked the aspect of Vincent Price.
Awesome.
What are you asking for?
His mustache.
Okay, so you ask for his mustache. You're offering him the thrice burned blood of Helena Bonham Carter, Johnny Depp, and Tim Burton, and a burnt offering of a VHS of Sleepy Hollow.
Fucking worth it.
That's an evocation ritual.
Oh, I am so happy with my choices.
There it is, right? But like mechanically, that's more or less, and you can make it as silly or as serious as you want it to be.
And it's perfect.
Oh,
And
good.
that's all you need to do. Boom. Next.
I don't know
Next.
where you're. So if it were an evocation, you would ask for his mustache. If it were an invocation, you would invoke the aspect of him that he may grow a mustache on you.
Oh,
I legitimately
please
thought
do,
you were going to
Spooky
say
Daddy.
invoke his mustache.
No, you would invoke him so that he can grow a mustache.
Yeah.
You would be grafting his mustache growing abilities onto your own personality.
Come inside me, Spooky Daddy.
So we found out that Yara really wants to get cummed in by Vincent Price, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, we're not letting this one lie.
No.
All right.
No, because now it's Vincent Price.
Yeah,
What
now
are you
we can
gonna
talk
do?
about it.
All right.
know-
I
Vincent
mean,
Price.
the best I can do nowadays is fucking John Waters' pencil mustache. I can't
Nobody,
live
nobody can do John Waters' pencil mustache except John Waters. John Waters can barely do John Waters' mustache.
with that. No, I know. It's hard, but that's the closest I can get to fucking Vincent Price. That's all I can do.
That's
so I have to live with that.
That's absolutely fair. So I think that's a pretty good covering of invocation versus evocation, kind of.
Yeah, sure. I'll take it.
Again, the difference between the two is really just what do you want to do?
And one point I would like to lay clear is that regardless of what you do, banish, banish, banish.
Absolutely. Either whether you invoke, whether you're evoking, banish the space, banish the person,
Banish the mustache.
never.
Become the mustache.
Oh god.
See, it's not just me, bitches!
But again, the caveat I would say for that is, especially starting out and especially with invocation, you should probably do that with others. Like somebody that you trust to be able to banish well.
Yeah, it's best to be able to have like a dead man's hand or a fail switch.
Yeah, like you want something like that that can help bring everything back down.
Right, because you don't want to live the rest of your life as a mustache.
Maybe you don't.
I do. I definitely... Like, have you listened to the last, like, fucking 15 minutes? I, of course, want to live the rest of my life as a mustache.
That'd be great. Think about how many hot dogs would just rub on you.
Oh, my God. I would be such a fucking cookie duster for those goddamn fucking hot dogs. The Faith Blind Council would like to take this time to give a very heartfelt thank you to West of Hell. At westofhell.com, you can find handmade occult artifacts, ranging from ritual leather masks, prayer beads, qliphothic mirrors, and other tools of the craft, some even made from human bone. Their resident artist, Curse Carter, creates these pieces with an anti-cosmic and adversarial intent. With years of experience in art forms like tattooing and leathercraft, if the tool you're looking for isn't offered, let them know. Commissions are always welcome. So go out and support West of Hell by visiting their website at westofhell.com. That's WESTOVHELL.com.
That's a lot better than "and we're back." We do that all the time. All hail the magic conch.
Or Skafuckle. Fuck you. Fuck the conch.
I mean, Skafuckle probably has a conch.
He probably does.
It's a big one, too.
All right, so
Big old conch. Fucking girthy ass shell.
like a pillar candle.
Now that's a thought.
Just conical.
Yep. It's there. It's round and girthy.
Colors now. So, to preface this conversation, what we're going to do over the next half hour or so is just a very quick overview of the colors of magic, their associations, and, what they're typically for, or, like how they're
associated, what you use them for, etc.
The understanding is there will be a deeper dive on many of these, if not all of them, at some point in the show.
All depends on how squirrely we're feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Like, none of this is... We try to plan it. There's no real reason to.
No.
It's all right. So, let's start off with colors. And before we get into individual colors, the model that this comes from is the Chaos Sphere.
Yes. This primarily comes from Peter Carroll's Liber Chaos. I think it was the 4th chapter. Yes, probably. I don't care.
I'm reasonably sure, but I can't be fucked to pull up my phone and hit a couple of buttons.
Nope, we got a fucking needy-ass cat who won't leave us the fuck alone over here.
It's true. It's absolutely true. Anyhow, the Chaos Sphere. If you Google search a Chaos Sphere, it's what's going to come up.
It's a fucking 8-pointed star.
And each of the points is indicative of a color of magic.
Yep. And so, as myself, I perceive this as different again, different facets to the individual. There are different avenues one can take, and each one of these things makes up the whole.
Each point's a color, and the center is yourself.
Yep, pretty much.
Very
That
much
was easy.
so. Very much so. So we'll go around and we can start talking about colors. Some of them are much more complex than others, and some of them are not.
Yeah, like red's really fucking hard and blue's okay.
Yeah.
When you're red-green colorblind, it's really hard. Some colors are different.
Okay, well, let's just start with blue then, all right?
Blue.
Blue
Wealth.
is wealth magic. So it's primarily concerned with understanding wealth and being able to have more of it.
One problem that a lot of people fall into is the concept of wealth is monetary. No, not at all.
Yeah, a lot of people conflate wealth with money. They are not the same thing.
Not by a fucking long shot.
Not at all. Carroll actually describes it that money is basically a tool for us to understand the expression of wealth.
Right. He had explained that wealth has its own thing. So wealth exists as its own kind of entity. Money exists as its own entity.
Here's the quote right here.
Boom. Got it.
Is wealth is a measure of how well you control your experiences with money. He has another quote. To work like a possessed maniac all day for the questionable pleasure of drinking oneself into near oblivion on vintage champagne every night is to have missed the point entirely.
No, and that totally makes sense. Towards the end, he had said, like, blue magic rituals may necessarily involve exorcisms of negative attitudes of wealth, and saying that money magic spells are rarely used in blue magic. The tendency nowadays is to cast spells designed to enhance schemes that are designed to make money. If you fail to provide a mechanism through which money can manifest, then either nothing will happen or the spell will flesh by strange means, such as a legacy from the untimely death of a much-beloved relative. Blue magic is a matter of carefully calculated investment. Anyone but a fool should be able to devise an investment that offers better odds than conventional forms of gambling.
Fuck, I'm a fool then.
Oh, yeah, we're goddamn idiots.
No, but respectfully, like, what he's saying there is that if all you're doing is just trying to make money, you're missing the point.
Right. Wealth is about... one thing that he had explained earlier is that wealth can also be perceived as the accumulation of experience. And that's why using it for gambling doesn't work, because gambling in and of itself is an experience. So doing magic for gambling, yeah, you're doing it, and you're getting the experience. That doesn't mean you're going to win.
It's kind of like doing a sigil, and then what you focus on during that is, I hope this sigil works.
Right. It's a lust for result.
Yeah. I think, when I think about wealth magic, I think less about, I need more money. Right? Because if I need more money, I can just work more. I can pick up overtime shifts. I can work myself into the fucking dirt. And I'll have more money, but I'm not going to feel wealthier.
Right.
It's about making your money work for you, to be able to gain those experiences.
And not just that, like, using wealth magic to cover your ass in certain situations. So, myself in particular, I had used blue wealth magic in order to cover my ass because our plumbing was broken. And I had I had created this ritual that had called upon my deceased grandmother, using her grave dirt. I had used blue candles, all sorts of shit. And my wife came in and she's like, you would better be doing something to fix this goddamn problem because our toilet wouldn't flush and it was around Thanksgiving. I'm like, okay, well, we're gonna figure this shit out. And it was right after I had done the ritual that the plumbers had figured the problem out. And like, okay, well, it's not going to cost nearly as much as we thought it was going to cost.
Yeah. For me, it's a lot of like understanding the function of money, in a you know, a day-to-day and within society at large. The thing that I've been doing probably the most recently with wealth magic is just setting up a savings account and understanding why I'm saving that money is not like, oh, now I just have this big pile of money. Like, that's my cover my ass money.
Right. It's like Carroll had said, creating blue magic is the creation of investment.
Exactly. And it's creating, it's understanding there's a very strong argument to be made that money is its own god form now.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree with that one.
People are slaves to money.
Oh yeah, people worship the dollar.
And it's not the other way around, and it should be. Money is a tool. Money is a thing for you to use. It works for you, not the other way around. And a lot of wealth magic is understanding that. And just by understanding that, like, you're already so far ahead of a lot of the population.
Yeah.
We have, from there, we can talk about green magic is another relatively simple one.
Green is relationships. How I deal with Dreadnought, or how I deal with Dylan. Like, our intercommunication, and at an intimate level, how we are able to accompany a single space and not fucking murder each other.
Yeah. It's about understanding relationships specifically between each other. I would argue that there is an aspect of green magic that involves knowing yourself in a social setting, in as much as, like, these are things that I get nervous about. These are things that I'm confident about, in the context of knowing when you're in a, like, social setting of, like, okay, this is something I need to step away from.
You're absolutely correct. In as much as if you were to see green as being representative of relationships, of boiling it down even further, love. In order for you to proceed any further, there has to be self-love. If you can't appreciate and love yourself, how can you love someone else? It's kind of like the concept of pouring into a cup. Like, if you can't fill your own cup, how can you pour into other people's?
I would also say the flip side of that is true of, if you can't appreciate and love things about yourself, how can you allow other people to do that about yourself?
Right. There are so many times that people are able to pass the faux pas of other people, but when it comes to themselves, that same thing they do not forgive. Like, at some point, say we're going out to a fucking concert or some shit, and I say something that might have angered you, Dylan, but you, personally, just overlook it. It doesn't fucking matter. Like, shit happens. But myself, I just focus in on that. That is something that it just festers within me.
Yeah, it just eats inside.
I don't offer myself the same forgiveness that I would offer you.
It's the meme of like when you're laying down to go to bed at night and hey, remember that time you fucked up 19 years ago? Like you're not letting go of that. For me, a lot of that manifests in like it is so hard for me to just accept a compliment. Because
You're a good dude, Dreadnought.
Thanks. Sometimes I just shit. Like
I like your tits.
Thank you.
Yeah, your tits are pretty on point, dude.
It's stuff like that of like I immediately kind of fire back with this like, oh yeah, but here's something really shitty about myself.
What's wrong about your tits?
They exist.
They're pretty great.
Yeah, I know. But that's you see what I'm saying, like
Yeah.
And it's something that I think a lot more people struggle with than are willing to admit it.
It's like I had said, you're able to offer forgiveness more for other people than you are for yourself.
Absolutely. I think a way to like to really work within that, again, it comes back to understanding and appreciating yourself. That's where any good green magic needs to start. Even if it's something as simple as like writing a list of like, here are 3 things that I love about myself. Here are 3 things that I appreciate about myself. Starting there and being able to affirm those things and understand that just because you affirm those things, or even understanding that just because something in your life needs to be improved, there's something you can work on, does not mean that you are a bad person for having something in your life that needs to be improved.
Right, no, absolutely. Like, magic itself is self-improvement. At a very base level, it is self-improvement, and we'll get to this at a later color, but you're looking in on yourself. You're improving yourself. You're making things better for yourself. That's all of it. That's all of it. You are changing your reality to make things better for yourself.
And god damn it, coming from someone who's only been doing this for 9 months, it's so fucking nice. I just feel so much better about myself now as a person. I'm so much more open about things now. But, compared to before I was doing this, it was just like, oh, yeah, sarcasm. It's my wall. I deflect everything.
Right. It gives you a kind of lens to focus in on yourself, but at the same time, it gives you the tools to fix any problem that you think you have.
For sure. And it's, understanding that like it still takes work.
No,
but
absolutely.
One of the biggest steps is understanding that I can do it. It's kind of there's been a thing I've noticed even in the last few years, just within like society at large, there's been a kind of a rejection of it's just the way I am.
How do you mean?
There's a lot of like, it used to be like I can't do this because it's just the way I am. I'm just an angry person. I just have a temper. I just, I block people off. I have walls. It's just the way I am. And then you kind of have, over the last however many years it's been happening, the people looking at like toxic traits, right? Of like, I do this and it's something that I'm working on. I've seen memes several times or like posts several times of like, it might be, an unpopular opinion, but saying that you do something because that's just how you are is a cop-out. You're not working to improve yourself.
Yeah, just using that as a fault of, well, I am this, so get used to it.
And to be clear, there's a difference between, things that you need to seek outside help for. Things that you should, see a mental health specialist for. But like for me, like it would have been like, my apartment's always a mess. It's just how I am. That's a cop out. I need to work on cleaning my fucking apartment. And it's doing that inside as well of like, oh, I'm just an angry person. That's just how I am. That's a cop out. I can control my temper. I just have to work at it and recognize that a lot of times it's just deciding to be angry.
Right. It's like I had said earlier, if you can't control your inner self, how do you expect to control your reality?
So moving from that, I think it's a good transition into yellow.
Yep.
Yellow is perceived as ego magic.
Yep.
Which primarily deals with the self.
Yellow is the self. As we had discussed earlier, yellow is the sun. The sun is the center. The absolute thing that you pay attention to. Everything that your being revolves around yourself. Like, you cannot exist without some concept of yourself. And yellow magic is the ability to control yourself.
And even beyond that, it's also the ability to exert yourself.
Yes, but there is a very fine line between yellow and red.
Yes, there's also a fine line between yellow and green.
Yes. In that when you are exhibiting your ego, when you are exhibiting yourself and what you stand for, it's not so much aggression, it's not so much empathy as what exists in green magic. It's just what you believe in. It's what you stand for. It's what you are.
Carroll has a really interesting quote about practicing yellow magic in terms of ego magic. According to Carroll, there are 4 aspects of yellow magic, which we'll get into. This is one of the ones that will have a much deeper dive on yellow magic. But in terms of ego magic, Carroll says that the goal of ego magic is to realize that we possess an ego, not that we exist as an ego.
That's an interesting way of thinking about that.
A lot of times you think of your ego as who you are.
Yeah. Like, even in a somewhat sense, your ego is a different person.
Right, and taking that from an older psychological model, like with Freud, thinking, okay, the ego, the id, the subconscious, these are things I can't control because they're just things that are.
But really,
you can control them. It just takes work. It takes effort. You have to recognize it for what it is.
Just like green magic, gotta love yourself, gotta understand your ego as well.
And it's, I would say the difference is a lot of, especially with the aspect of ego, and especially in the realm of yellow, it's more about control. It's more about reining that in. Because a lot of people, it's something that, especially in, Western society, is not real. Like, you rely on outside sources to check your ego.
Right.
You rely on somebody else kind of putting you in your place. And it's something that, as a side effect, a lot of people aren't really given the skills and given the tool set to be able to do that for themselves. And that is what ego magic is about, in my mind at least.
No, I agree. From my own standpoint, it seems to me as though the whole concept of individuality is a very new thing to us as a species. And so within the concept of ego magic, we're still trying to wrap our monkey heads, our monkey minds around this. For the longest time, it was always as a group. Everything we had done together as a group. But now we're able to comprehend ourselves as an individual. And because of that, it takes a lot of work. Like, more than many people are willing to put into it, which is why...
Or even recognize that they need to put into it.
Right. No, which is why, in my personal opinion, it seems as though so many people who are trying to fix their own problems fall into a trap where they aren't able to reconcile these issues.
How do you mean?
You're not able to reconcile the fact, like, okay, well, I don't need to rely on other people to tell me how to behave, how to tell me how to react to things. A prime example is within certain workplaces. So, like, not necessarily union, but saying, okay, well, there are these people who are coming in and they're taking our jobs and they're doing all of this. There's a very very much belief in the collective, but at the same time, you're not able to focus in on the fact that, okay, well, maybe that's not it. I'm just kind of following along with what everyone around me is saying.
You're talking about like pack mentality.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, very much so.
I think to kind of build on with that, I think there's an interesting disconnect between the pack mentality of making the pack better, or the tribe, or however you want to view it, better, but not relying on that tribe to make you better. There's especially in my experience, you see it a lot in veteran communities of, this is my problem, I'll deal with it. I don't need someone else to tell me how to, I don't need someone else to confide in. It's a problem that exists in my mind, so my mind can fix it. And people don't recognize that my mind is the thing that is telling me the thing that's fucked up to begin with.
Right, which is, it's kind of what I was saying. It's very difficult to express the fact that we are moving past a collective mindset toward an individual mindset, but at the same time relying on that collective mindset.
Absolutely. It's looking at being a part of the group, but only one way.
Right. Which is another thing that within modern culture I've seen people have stated the old quote, blood is thicker than water, right?
I think I know where you're going with this.
Right.
The whole quote.
Right. The full quote is the pact of the covenant is thicker than the blood of...
It's the blood... The full quote is, the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb.
Right. Which didn't show up until recently. That, to me, expresses modern ideology.
There's a bunch of quotes like that, too, that are very, like... you only get half of it, and the other half of it completely changes the meaning. Like,
right.
Curiosity killed the cat.
But satisfaction brought it back.
And it changes the whole, and I think you see a lot of resurgence in that because people are moving towards exploration and being able to identify as an individual within a system and figuring out how that individuality still fits within the system.
It's like, I've had friends express to me, like, how can there be any individuality if we're all one?
Well, that's for you to figure out.
That is a fucking giant Matterhorn of a problem, and you need to get on that individually. I can't answer that for you. You have to solve that problem for yourself.
Right? It's like that road up the mountain ain't gonna fucking walk itself, bud.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna walk it for you.
I can't.
I physically cannot do
because
this.
There are some people in my life that if I could, I would. But I cannot.
Back to green magic, baby.
Exactly.
Love others.
Exactly. So that's kind of just a very, very surface level take on yellow magic. Because again, with according to Carroll, there are 4 aspects of it.
Yeah.
And that's one that we'll probably have a whole episode just on. Let's move on to orange magic. Orange is another one of those ones there's a lot of facets to it, but none of them are particularly like, especially compared to the yellow we just talked about, none of them are particularly like dive all the way into. Orange magic is kind of like thinking magic. Traditionally it was described as like charlatanry,
yeah. Just thinking on the balls of your feet. Like, something
quick
comes
as
to
you
you, boom, you have an answer. You don't have to think about it, you know. If you're fucking walking along the street and there's a problem, boom, I know the answer to that.
Mm-hmm, right.
Like, there's nothing you have to overly think about. You immediately know the answer, which also can play into like riddles and shit. So someone presents you with a riddle, it's the first thing that comes to mind. It's orange magic is very much thinking. Balls of your feet, the quickest thing you can think of.
And paradoxically, I think that's how Carroll describes it. Like, it's weird because a lot of, like, a really concrete way of accessing orange magic is not thinking about it. Is thinking about not thinking. You see orange magic a lot in the aspect of, like, it's on the fucking tip of my tongue, and I can't fucking, and it's gonna bother me all day. And then you start thinking about something else. You go back to doing work. You go back to studying or whatever. And then out of nowhere, fucking Mountain Goats. That was the band I was thinking of.
And Dreadnought can attest to this. I have come up with shit like months later.
Yeah.
Like, we'll be at work, and apropos of fucking nothing, I will just yell something out. He's like, what the fuck was that? I'm like, no, remember when we had that discussion
3 months ago?
Like, I completely forgot what the thing was. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That is the thing.
Like, that at its most surface level is
orange.
Is orange magic. Yeah. Historically, orange magic has also been like sleight of hand,
because then that's when it falls back into the charlatanry. You're able to manipulate others. You're thinking on the balls of your feet. You're thinking quickly.
It's the Kansas City Shuffle. You get them to look left, and then you go right.
Right. You're able to manipulate other people. You're thinking quickly.
One of my favorite things about that, right, when you talk about orange magic in that regard, is the ending of the Prestige.
Oh, that was a good movie.
Where at the end of the Prestige is like Hugh Jackman's talking about, you never understood why we did this. If we can get them to believe for just a second that magic is real, then we've done our jobs. Like, that is orange magic.
Right.
Historically speaking. Yeah. Nowadays, it's, again, much more, because information is so much more readily available, but you can still see it. Like, dude, people, for whatever reason, fucking love Chris Angel. That's orange magic.
Penn and Teller have the show Fool Me.
Yeah.
And they've been doing it for fucking decades. They have, like, there's this whole concept of doing shit quickly. Being able to manipulate things quickly in order to suit your own needs.
Exactly. That is pretty much what orange magic is. It's, orange magic is, I just passed this test with an A and I didn't study for shit. And realistically, like, psychological model, it's, I memory recall from just passively soaking this in from sitting in here for, the past 12 weeks.
Fuck, for all you know, it could have been the fact that for the last 3 months, you've been fucking laying hard into this teacher, and they're, like, totally into you?
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
But that's orange. Again, orange is kind of, it's one of those ones that, like, it sees a lot of use, but there's not a lot of, like, intellectual.
It's very nebulous.
Because being super intellectual about it is kind of counterproductive to what it is.
Right.
It's kind of like when...
It's intuitive.
Yeah.
It's
kind
very intuitive, like much like divination. Think of orange as like the color of divination.
Yeah. Very much. Makes a lot of sense. Where am I at? Sorry, I'm staring at notes, and I can't remember what all we've done. So we haven't done purple yet.
Purple would be sex magic, or
Also, purple/silver.
yeah, purple/silver is sex magic, orgasmic magic.
Are they the same thing or are they different?
They're the same.
Okay, on the point.
Well, okay, so the reason why the discrepancy in color, you have purple representing royalty or extravagance,
Yeah.
while silver you have representing moon. Or a femininity to it,
Yeah.
and a kind of subtlety.
That being said, purple is another episode we'll probably have a whole thing about. If you read a lot of, like, Carroll's stuff about it, it becomes super evident that it was written in the 70s. It was written in a time when there really was not a conversation about non-binary, like, identification. So it's hard to, like, look at it and, like, apply it to...
Well, that stands to reason with the whole yellow thing, too, and the whole concept of pecking order.
Yeah, there are a lot of things, but there are cores in there that are very, very important to grasp onto. One of the big cores of purple magic that I think, like, almost didn't really even start translating until, like, 2000s, 2010 plus, is the idea of body acceptance. The idea of, like, the same way that you have to love your mind and love your soul, you need to love your body.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that it can't be improved, but you need to
Accept it for what it is.
Yeah, you need to be able to accept your body, and that's where, again, a lot of it has to start.
And that was one thing with purple magic from the very beginning, is the concept of pushing boundaries. Again, especially with sex magic. The concept of asexuality, heterosexuality, bisexuality, asexuality, anything. Push it. You identify as this, try something else. Push it. Make it harder for yourself. What can you... Yes.
Push it real good.
Push it real good. Make it harder. Accept what there is. Does that work for you? Does it not? Find something else. Does homosexuality work? No? Okay. Try pansexuality. Find someone else. Do something else. Push your own boundaries. Because by pushing your own boundaries, you're able to understand what it is that makes you.
And, like, obviously, like, the purple magic, you can work with yourself or with others. Clearly.
Yes.
And I would argue that a lot of the most effective purple magic, purely mechanically speaking, is done by yourself. I.e., I don't know if that's how you're supposed to use IE or not, but I'm taking it.
EG is example, IE is in other words.
Okay, then, yeah, whatever. It's fine. Doesn't matter. The point is, like, if you're using orgasm to charge a sigil, that's probably more effectively done by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, obviously, if you have a partner that's okay with it, like, some people are going to be like, why are you taping this piece of paper to my forehead?
Right, not just that. If you're doing it by yourself, okay, like, as a male, just fucking jerking your dick. All right, that's fucking cool. Well, what can I do to make this stronger? Well, I've heard about the male G-spot, which if I finger my ass, it might make it stronger.
Yeah. And it's also more like it's a way for you to be able to explore your own sexuality.
Yeah, and your body for that acceptance.
Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Explore yourself, your sexuality. What is it that makes you? And
Big
it's
dick.
the same with the other colors. What is it that makes you? Find out for yourself.
And it also comes right back to that base belief of magic is inherently self-improvement. And so a lot of it starts with itself. There's also like it's touchy with purple magic because you get a lot of assholes that are like, "Oh, that means I'm just going to come in here and start banging people." Like, fuck off. No. Like that's not how any of this fucking works.
No, we will absolutely have an episode where we just discuss sex magic, all of that shit. There are so many different
there are a lot of misconceptions.
well, there's a lot of misconceptions, but there are a lot of like fine points that you need to come across because it's such an intricate topic. It's what works for me does not necessarily work for you. And because of that, like what's slightly acceptable to me is absolutely forbidden for you.
For sure. Again, that's a big deep dive. Moving on, I think from here the next 3 that we have to cover are also like that. The next one is red, being war magic. War magic is one of those ones where on the surface it seems relatively simple. Much like from a distance, the concept of war seems relatively simple.
Just mashing each other.
But it requires a lot of, like, you have to be strategic about stuff.
Strategically mashing each other.
But it also comes down to, like, thinking about what is the purpose of a war.
Right.
What is the purpose? Why? What? Thinking about, is this the option I need to take? Because 99.99% of the time, that problem goes away if you just fucking ignore it.
Yep. And that's another thing that a lot of people ignore with war magic is the subtlety of it. Take, for example, World War II. So much subterfuge. So much, like, espionage.
Code breaking. Like,
it existed in folds. But, like, people think war, they don't think of all the intricacies that go behind that.
they think of conventional warfare. They think
They just think, I'm gonna fucking stab you or shoot you, whatever.
Bombs, guns, explosions, all of that shit, right?
Yeah, bringing up World War II, that reminds me of a good quote. Can't remember the general, but he said that the war was fought on 2 fronts, on the battlefield and behind the folders.
Yes,
So it was 100%.
absolutely.
Like, you had to have the information before you can even act, before you even think about acting.
Well, and I think I was watching actually a really, like, poignant documentary about this. There's a documentary that came out in, I think, 2016, Alex Gibney did, called 0 Days. And it's about the Stuxnet computer virus and that attack on fucking the Natanz nuclear facility in Iran. And all of that, like, that stuff, go and watch it. It's worth watching. But it leads to this point that he makes at the end. Like, his whole thesis is that, like, wars are fought and won before boots even hit the ground anymore. Like, like, and it's, warfare is entering such a different age of, like, subterfuge of, like, we don't know who attacked. We don't know where it came from. Whereas before, like, World War II was like, I'm putting a big fucking flag on my plane and I'm painting "From America with Love" on my bombs so you know who's coming. Like,
All right, the fucking American Revolution where you have, like, Concord and Lexington. Who fired the first shot?
Yeah.
Does it? Yeah, that's blatantly obvious versus, okay, we're moving the pieces behind the scene.
One of my other favorite things about this that kind of comes into war magic, not directly, but the movie Training Day. When Jake Hoyt figures out what's going on, and he's like, "You've been planning this all day," and then fucking Alonzo is just like, "Motherfucker, I've been planning this all week." Like, that's war. That's like, if you don't go in with a game plan and come out with have a game plan to get out, look at where we're at now. Like,
right.
And that's the subtlety. That's the, like, that people overlook. Because immediately people are like, oh, well, I got to get this shit together, and I want to attack this guy, and I want to... That's a fight. A fight is not a war.
No, but, don't get me wrong, there are aspects in red magic where it is overtly aggressive.
Oh, absolutely. Because that is a facet of war. A facet of war, like, there's a difference between being in a war and, like, genocide.
True.
Being in a war, and I think that's actually a point that Carroll makes. There's a quote, he has something about that, but there's a difference. Usually a war historically is fought over a resource. It's about domination, and it's about taking an objective. That's not, like, genocide's not that. That's not war. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's a time and a place for that aggression. Another thing that a lot of people, in my opinion, overlook when it comes to red magic is preparedness, warding, being able to defend yourself, being able to, shirk off those attacks or deflect those attacks, is important.
No, absolutely. I've told you that before, that before approaching certain situations, make sure that your warding game is fucking on point.
Yeah. And it's something that you really have to be able to look at and recognize, like, okay, where do I need to shore up my defenses? Where am I weak at? Where could something hit me that would hurt? And that doesn't mean, like, okay, well, I'm just gonna put fucking steel fucking barricades all around myself. That's a terrible idea, because that's going to lead to stagnation and ultimately loss. But you need to know how to defend those areas, and it's going to be different for everything else. Like, being in a relationship, you can't...
Being able to see the fucking crater...
Yeah.
And understanding where the shrapnel's going to go.
Exactly. It's, again, the more you talk about it, the more you realize how much goes into it. So red is one of those tricky colors to work with, because oftentimes people will have one way of looking at it, and the more you actually do it, it changes drastically. So that's something to keep in mind with red magic.
From here, I think we've got black.
Yeah.
Is that the last color? I think we have another one.
We have two more.
Two more, okay.
Black is the one we're going to go into next. Black is death magic.
Which, black is heavy. Myself particularly, I have been working with black death magic for quite some time. And this is... It's something you have to change your perspective about. It is something that encapsulates how all problems end. Like, whether or not you put a whole lot of effort into it, does it really matter in the long run?
There was a saying when I was doing my medic training that I loved that applies to this so much, which is, one way or another, the bleeding's going to stop.
Very, very fucking appropriate.
Right.
A lot of people, when you think about, like, black magic, death magic, they think about, like, the way it's portrayed in popular culture. You think about like the Necromancer in Diablo 2.
Or like a Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
You know, the incarnate of death.
And Grim Reapers have their place.
Yeah.
But they think of it being like this, like, and part of it is like these grim, dark, spooky kids and, you know, whatever. And that is one aspect of death magic is destruction magic. But the part that very few people want to talk about is the aspect of death conceptually. Everything dies. Every person dies. It is an extension of living.
It's a very human thing. We all grow up understanding we are going to die at some point.
Well,
everything you love disappears.
And that's true, but the step that you have to take further is that in that regard, death defines life.
Without death, there is no life.
Mm-hmm.
Without something dying, it just exists.
Yeah.
There's no life to it. Death defines life.
It forces duality.
And it extends further than the individual. Like, the universe will die at some point.
Whether or not it goes out into a giant fucking explosion or just disappears
just
like a
withers
fucking
away.
whisper.
Yeah. It's there. And then, you know, you get into like, okay, well, if the universe is going to die, that would, through the like transitive property, means that the universe is alive. It's a living thing. It's fucking deep. And it's something that a lot of people don't fuck with. And not that you should fuck with it in like a flippant sense, but it's something that you're going to come up to at some point. You're going to be faced with your own mortality at some point.
Because in a very basic sense, like, if you were to not approach it from, all of these extremely dark meanings, taking black magic, just black as in death, you could see it as it's entropic. So, entropic being entropy, you just want something to dissipate and go away. So, you could approach it, I'm going to work black magic within this thing so that way my assistant manager no longer has any power and it starts drifting away and I don't have to deal with him anymore. And he's shitty micromanaging.
Yeah. It could also be viewed in a way of like, I'm sick of being fucking anxious all the time. And I need to identify that, but I just want that feeling to dissipate. You know, there are ways you can look at it that way. There are also a lot of like weird kind of metaphysical juxtapositions. Or when we were just talking about red magic, and I said genocide isn't war. Genocide is an expression of death magic, and that's fucked up to think about, right?
Black and red coincide very, very much together.
But they are not the same thing.
Absolutely not.
You cannot put them in the same ball, you know. A lot of times people mistake them and they think about it has to involve this, right? Red magic has to involve black magic. One other way of looking at it is that black magic is the expression of failed red magic because it's the last option.
Now, quick question. The 8-sided star, is it static? Like, does each point have, like, reds on top, yellows on bottom?
No,
doesn't
okay,
matter.
so it just,
Nope.
they're there. Okay.
You do it yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I did my own shit. Each point on the 8-pointed star has its own point.
Mm-hmm.
And there are particular directions that each color points at.
Yeah.
But
Your
that's
star is
unique
different
to
from
me.
everyone else's.
Yeah. If you look it up, you'll see, like, typically they're arranged in an aesthetic way,
Yeah.
but that is not, like, important.
Not at all. Just to give reference.
Yeah, like I have like a painting of one that I made, but it's just a reference point. There's no importance to it beyond it just being aesthetic.
But that, I think, moves us on to our last color, Octorine.
So Octorine comes from a concept in a Terry Pratchett book.
The color of magic.
And Octorine is a color that only the magician can see.
Only the wizards.
Mm-hmm.
Only the wizards can see Octorine. And so this is very much like it's used as a last focus point, because after you've mastered all of the other ones, this is the one that you can focus on. As you have perceived yourself as a magician, what is your magical color that only you can see?
And that's also representative of what typically it's most often expressed as contacting one's holy guardian angel.
The pure self.
Yeah, your future wizard self.
Yeah. I like it. Future wizard self. I used to play bass for future wizard self.
Oh, nice.
Anyways, it's something that is highly individual.
Mm-hmm. Very personalized upon yourself.
I mean, it doesn't take... If you follow Carroll, it doesn't take a whole lot of effort, because it's basically how you see things magically.
Yeah, but it's also like, it's highly individual because it's based entirely around your goals. Specifically with magic.
Right.
And that is something that you're only going to figure out as you do magic.
Right. No, you have to figure that out on your own, because as Carroll had explained, by being able to perceive your own Octorine, you're able to see the minutia between each color and how they interact with each other. So, as we had mentioned, how black interacts with red, you'll understand that.
Mm-hmm.
How that works for you, how the black, the death, works with your own aggression, or how that aggression works towards your ego, or how your thinking magic works towards your own sexuality.
It's, the thing is, like, the most important thing I would say to leave with just an overview of color magic is that none of them exist in a vacuum.
Nope.
None of them exist in a vacuum, and no combination of them exists in a vacuum. Just like yourself, right? You can be depressed about something, but you are not depression. You know, that doesn't exist. You can be addicted to something, and that addiction does not exist in a vacuum.
No, why are you addicted to that? So, like, for example, you were working on drinking. Why? Why do you feel the need to do it?
I was 100% hurting myself. I want to better myself.
But that initial urge, why?
Makes me feel better about myself.
Why?
Because I've been doing it for so long, so it's just the crutch I always lean on.
Why? I'm not asking you to actually, like, pour your fucking heart out for this. But as an example, you keep finding reasons for it. And by finding reasons for it, you're able to find solutions for it and better yourself.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. If I can make an excuse, I can make a reason to better it.
Well, it's also, it's not...
That's actually a really, really good quote.
That really is.
Thanks,
If
guys.
I'm able to find an excuse for it, I can find a solution.
Yeah. And it's also, it's more indicative of, like, you'll pull at these threads and pull at these threads, and you'll start to see where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
You're dismantling yourself.
Yeah, and you have to in order to be able to make yourself better.
Yeah.
You cannot fix a car engine if you don't take the car engine apart.
And if you cannot control your inner mind, how do you expect to control your own reality?
Exactly.
That's a good quote.
You also, if you just go in and start taking apart the car engine, and you're not careful, and you're not meticulous about where you're leaving the parts, or what tools, you're not using the correct tools, you could probably still get it done, but putting it back together is going to be a son of a bitch.
Could possibly even hurt yourself in the process.
So that's, that's the purpose of the Chaos Sphere, the different colors of magic. It's a tool to be able to categorize yourself, to be able to map your own psyche.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a pretty good spot to kind of curtail that conversation. Again, like I had said at the beginning of it, there will be aspects of this that we will talk more about in the future. There are some that we might only talk about for a little bit, but it gives you a reference point.
We would like to give a shout out to the Chaos Coven, or Church of Nothing. The Chaos Coven is a Chicago-based chaos magic working group led by Naya Ein and Ninov. They host workshops every third Saturday of the month from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Occult Bookstore in Chicago, Illinois. Considered by some to be the oldest spirit shop in the world. Each class is pay as thou wilt, with a $15 suggested donation. You can find the Chaos Coven and the Occult Bookstore on Facebook or occultbookstore.com.
All right, so back, about to wrap this up. It's time for the Tell Dylan What to Do part of the show. So at the beginning of this episode, we gave you a new paradigm that you're going to be working with. And I think
Australian Aboriginal Dream Time.
So Yara has a challenge specific to that.
So the first half of this episode, we had talked about evocation, invocation.
Yep.
I want you to either evoke or invoke the bunyip.
What is the bunyip?
You have to figure it out.
Cool. All right. I'll probably do invocation because I'm more comfortable with it.
Figure it out.
The bunyip is a mythical entity within the Dreamtime. It somewhat coincides with the Aztec Quetzalcoatl, and kind of like a feathered snake, that kind of thing. But I won't say any more.
Yeah, just
figure it
idea.
out.
Figure your shit out.
Mm-hmm.
What is the bunyip?
All right,
figure it out.
And I'll spell it for you. Bunyip. Bunyip.
Cool. Okay, so do either evocation of the bunyip while I'm working with my paradigm.
Inform us next episode what the fuck the bunyip is.
Yeah. Okay.
Tell us more.
Good
So
challenge. All right.
That's challenge number 1.
Building it up to yours.
No, that his is different.
Yeah.
Mine is the second part of the episode. We had talked about colors. I want you to come up with a ritual to perform, not to perform it, but to come up with a ritual, written down, steps, statement of intent, everything, to inform you of how to work within colors.
Any colors or all colors?
How to pick colors that you're going to work with.
Okay.
I want you to have it written out like an actual
Yeah, I'll bring
ritual.
my notepad next week then.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will look at that and probably have you start doing it.
Yeah, okay. I might have a couple questions throughout the month with that, just to help me out, yeah.
I mean, you, just like anyone else who is listening, can contact either myself or Dreadnought over Twitter. I'm at Yarmarud.
You can find me at Dr. Laserbomb. It's a whole thing. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and that was the funny thing. Your fucking handle has more letters, more characters than mine does. So suck a fucking fat donkey dick. Giving me shit that mine is fucking super long. Yours is more than mine.
Yeah, but mine's like words.
Mine is one word. One.
It seems just like a collection of letters, though.
One word.
You can also find us on Twitter. You can reach out to the podcast at FBC Podcast, the number 1. You can find us on Instagram at FBC Podcast. You can email us at faithblindpodcast@gmail.com. We also have a Facebook group, which is Faith Blind Council. If you just search that on the Facebook thing, it's there.
Yeah, it'll probably show up. We'll be around.
Yeah,
we'll
for
hang
sure.
out. Send us a message. And once again, we would like to thank Emi for asking us several questions.
Yeah, thanks
that
for
we
reaching
were-
out.
Yeah. Thanks for reaching out, for letting us answer your questions.
Also, we finally have a Patreon.
Fuck yeah!
We have that. That is the one that helps to improve our audio equipment, to be able to do cool stuff, sponsor some like giveaways and shit like that.
And have us have episodes more than once a fucking month.
Absolutely. So that's awesome, and a huge thank you to our patrons. And we are going to get the fuck out of here now, but we love you very much, and we will see you on the next episode, where we're going to start doing some more stuff.
Yeah, what are we covering next week?
Next
Month.
I would love to do a weekly
Yeah,
show.
I would
It
too.
would be crazy good. Next month, probably, I feel like we're...
No. We're doing Wicca.
You're right. We're doing Wicca because it's October.
Fuck yeah! Fucking
so
Wicca.
We're going to talk about Wicca. We're going to talk about all sorts of cool shit. So that'll be out in October.
Yep.
Be ready for it. And until then, we will fucking be doing shit.
Hail Skafuckle.
Hail
Skafuckle.
Skafuckle. This has been a production of the Faith Blind Council. Please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/faithblindcouncil. We would also like to thank our sponsors. You can support us by supporting them. You can also contact us on Twitter at FBC Podcast, the number 1, on Instagram at FBC Podcast, and via email at faithblindpod@gmail.com.